Hi, this is Nick Dawson, the editor-in-chief of Talkhouse Film, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Film podcast. As an artist, you're lucky if you get to be known as one thing: a comedy director, a torch singer, an abstract painter, a postmodern poet. For the two people in conversation on today's episode of the Talkhouse Film podcast, they parlayed their fame in one field into the pursuit of all their creative passions. The artists in question, Henry Rollins and Alex Winter, have known each other for nearly 25 years and have crossed paths for nearly 35. Back then, Rollins was the iconic lead singer of Black Flag, and Winter an aspiring young filmmaker and punk fan who was pursuing acting as a way of paying his bills. The two Bill and Ted movies made Winter a star, but instead of staying in the spotlight, he chose to shun acting for a career behind the camera, directing his first feature Freaked in 1993. Rollins, who was no longer in Black Flag and was by then an actor, writer, and spoken word artist, as well as the frontman of Rollins' band, contributed to the soundtrack of Freaked. Winter has of late taken a left turn into non-fiction filmmaking, with two tech-themed docs, Deep Web and Downloaded. Rollins was interviewed by Winter for the latter, and he may well also be appearing in the Frank Zappa doc Winter is currently working on. The occasion for this conversation was the release of The Last Heist, a genre movie in which Rollins plays a serial killer, and the pair discuss the film at the end of their chat. But what they mostly talk about is creativity and the almost primal drive to make art. And along the way, you'll also learn about how Crispin Glover encouraged Rollins to pursue acting, Winter's classic response to MTV's request for him to VJ in character as Bill, Rollins' story about taking a bus to a catastrophic audition for The Lion King, and his planned documentary which was nixed in record time by National Geographic.
Okay, so this is the Talkhouse podcast, and I'm Alex Winter, and I'm a filmmaker and writer and actor, and I'm sitting here with Henry Rollins, who's far more hyphenate than that. I'll stop there.
I'm just a crass opportunist. You're the one with the talent.
Yeah,
but
right.
We are both sitting here, and we're going to talk at each other for a while.
Yes, exactly. That's the essence of it.
We better be good.
The funny thing is, I realized, you've interviewed me, I've interviewed you.
Yep.
The first time I shot you was at the Ritz in 1985.
Wow.
For Black Flag. First time I saw you live was in 82, I want to say, either Mud Club or the Reggae Lounge.
Mud Club.
Mud Club. That's what I thought too.
Reggae Lounge would be 84.
Right. And well done. And we have intersected across many different avenues over the years.
Yeah. I mean, we've done the interview thing, but I got to work on your very fine film Freaked.
You did.
As a supplying the soundtrack music.
Opening title. Yeah.
I got to work with the great Andy Hawkins.
Yep.
Who told me flat out, with Blind Idiot God, of course, his band, he said, I don't like singers. We are an instrumental band. We're just not into it. But for you, and it was a very nice thing for him to say. He's like, we're really not into it. It's not what we do, but we dig you. And we're very happy to have this cool exception. And I really like that song we put together for your film. And I like the film, too.
Yeah, thanks.
I like that thing. The first time I was aware of you, I think would be the Idiot Box, which was MTV. Yeah, it's a mixed bag. But to me, that was the smartest moments of MTV was the Idiot Box. And our mutual friend Modi would gang them up on videotapes so we could watch them on tour. And the Sinead O'Connor goes into the convenience store, she just drives the clerk out of his mind. The If I Had My Way guy who
my
gets
favorite
high
character
on
I ever played. Yeah.
caffeine pills and Slim Jims.
Yeah.
like
the best acting I ever did in my life.
You were out of your mind. And the Sinead character, you need money. What is money? What is that? You're like, ah! And you're going into some sleep-deprived psychedelic wormhole. Oh, so good.
Yeah, those were fun days. MTV they'd never done live action before. So.
And they took a chance with you. And what was your partner's name?
Tom Stern.
Tom Stern, such a good guy.
Yeah.
And you and Tom were so radical for MTV and so brilliant. And there's no way there weren't people giving a sigh of relief, finally something I can watch on this damn channel that doesn't insult my intelligence. And man, that was the best thing that ever happened to MTV, in my opinion.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. We were broke. We were ex-NYU film students, and we got broker making that show.
As you do, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all your so many artistic endeavors. You come from minimum wage work or whatever, and you like, okay, top ramen noodles again. And then you start trying to do your own whatever it is.
Yeah.
And like, we're going to make a 4-second film. You're broke. Now you're eating, mud. You're eating acorns and trying to chase the squirrel to eat the squirrel. I mean, you really get a sense of what it's going to take and how bad you want to do something. And that the biggest lesson of Black Flag for me, not that I'm trying to get on the topic, was you want something, here's how hard you have to work for it. And I'd never worked that hard in my life. It was like, I was a hardworking person. That basically smacked the spit out of my mouth, man, trying to keep up in that band on no money with high ambition. And from that, I took that into, having an independent record label, doing all kinds of independent things. You got to want it so bad. And if you're innovative, you got to be so tough.
Yeah.
Like you and Stern, you guys had to just hang in there.
Yeah, there was a lot. You eat a lot of crap.
Yeah.
And you have to be, really, and we talked about this a bit offline as well. You really have to genuinely not be in it for the money, where it's like that
Truly.
just isn't the issue.
No, because if it is, you will eventually exhaust.
Yeah.
And you will get aggravated because you're not going to make it.
Right.
And by the time you do start making it, you don't care about it at all.
Yeah.
And for me, money was always like, I need drumsticks because the guy keeps breaking them. I need bass strings and a van to put all these bastards in and take them down the road.
Yeah.
It was never like, I want a Porsche. I want,
Right.
80 dancing bears. I just need a new lens. It's always been function.
That was, and for me, that was, coming out of NYU, I was broke. I had acted as a kid, and I started acting again. And while I was doing those, the Bill and Ted movies and that stuff, all that money was just getting socked into, me and Stern were living in that crappy apartment in Venice, which,
Right.
and not far from where you guys were.
Right.
And we were cutting the Idiot Box out of it on whatever our editing system was in those days in our crappy apartment. And every penny that I made was just getting fueled into, okay,
Right.
we can get more props, we can get more whatever.
Right.
It never crossed our minds to do, I don't think I bought a car, like a nice car. I had like a crappy old car for like the first 5 or 6 years of being in LA trying to hustle it together.
But you know what? I think there's something to be said for that kind of drive and that kind of toughness, because at least in my experience, for me, that kind of like hand-to-mouth Scrabble is very long, thankfully, behind me. But it informs everything I do. Mm-hmm. I hit everything with the same intensity I did as I was 20. I'm not, and I don't want to be better than you. I don't want your money. I just want to be really good at what I'm doing, acting, spoken word, whatever. I want to hit it so hard, someone hurts. Like something's got to go ow, because I hit it that hard. And it comes from those really feral, lean days. And I've never really backed off of that intensity, because I think that's what it really requires. Mm-hmm. When you can divorce yourself from the money thing, man, you're untouchable. Like at that point, they're going to have to hit you with an elephant gun to bring you down.
Yeah.
And I get letters from young people all the time. Hey, I'm thinking about starting a band. What do you think? And I want to say, if you had to write me, you're probably never going to, I never asked anybody any advice.
Right.
The only thing I ever asked of anyone is you have a light, turn it on, put it on me.
Yeah.
Or get out of the way because this is going to hurt.
Right.
Otherwise, if you ask, I think, you're going to get eaten, because you're hesitating. You just got to kind of run into it and just be kind of fearless.
I remember being backstage at the Ritz show in '85, and I remember, and this was right around the time I started to become friends with Gibby and the guys from the Butthole
Sure,
Surfers,
great guys.
who innovated a lot, but took a big page out of your guys' book in terms of that work ethic, in terms of really having a band that lived it, and the sort of hardcore nature of living for the music in that way. And I remember that the vibe of being backstage and watching the intensity with which you guys lived this thing, both on stage and off stage, and it really was it had a huge impression on me in terms of what we were film students at the time, so in terms of what we came out of that, and we lived in that same way. I mean, we when we were doing work with the Buttholes down in Texas, and it was the same. We'd pack up a car, we lived, ate, and breathed it, and we really took a page out of the book. And what I find interesting is that a lot of the people who came from that world, you and Ian and other people who grew up out of, you all continued to do really good work, and you didn't go down in flames. And it was like, what my point is that what appeared to me, it was something that I saw in what you guys were doing even then. It was like, okay, this is built to last. Like, there's what's going on back here. I remember thinking that at an AC/DC show too, where I went backstage at AC/DC.
They're real, man.
And it was like, dude, that backstage was not, parties and chicks, and it was super intense and a family, and very much, we are 100% about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's, it's building something to last, I think.
Yeah, and it's coming from a ferocity and a conviction of, we're beyond trying to be the best band. That's lightweight. We're just going to do this show to death. That night, I got knocked out cold.
Right.
Guy ran across stage. I swung to the left as he was charging off my right to jump off stage. And, as physics, I took the impact. He jumped off. Nothing happened to him. I'm on the ground, like birds around my head, and I got up and with a severe concussion and spent the rest of the show trying not to vomit or face plant, because you just lose all equilibrium.
Right.
And you can't say to Black Flag, like, I hit my head, I'm going to have a sit down. Right. Like, no, you're not.
No.
Finish the show.
Yeah.
And I finished that show in a state of nausea and slight panic. I'm like, I'm injured. And the headshot's scary.
Yeah.
And I got quite a few. I got knocked out cold more than once in that band on stage.
Yeah, an extremely physical show. I remember the 82 show that I saw was, and I was fairly young, but I grew up around New York, and I'd gone to a lot of CB Sunday punk matinees,
crazy
and
shows,
and very kraut and shows where really horrible things were happening to people. But the Black Flag 82 show was the scariest show I ever saw in terms of what was going on stage and off stage.
Yeah, it was, the whole thing was nuts. I mean, we were as crazy as anyone in the audience. So I got a question for you. Yeah, you got busy, like right out of film school. You might not have been making money, but you're intellectually and artistically engaged in that, in a lot of ways, just from what I know. You didn't come exactly fully formed. Who does? But you came with a very solid ideas. Like, you kind of hit the ground running. Idiot Box, Bill and Ted's, and then I remember you and I were in the Sutton Hotel in Vancouver. You were doing some big commercial, and I was doing some film that I never even saw, and I honestly can't remember the titles. Bruce McDonald, who I just love that guy. I'll do anything he wants me to do.
Yeah.
And
what year is this?
It was
2005, 6,
something. But we were in the lobby.
Yeah.
And Danny Glover, the actor, he was in the lobby. It's that hotel they put.
Yeah, everybody.
Every production is in that hotel. You were in the lobby. I'm like, what are you doing here, man? You're like, I'm shooting an ad, and you're doing some big commercial. So my question is, when did you start getting like what you wanted? Was it around Bill and Ted's? Like, I got a baby budget, I got a cast, I got money to make this idea. Like, when did you start getting some traction, and what was it that got you the traction, and what did you do with it? The initial shot.
Yeah, Bill and Ted 1 gave me a lot of traction. I was on Broadway through my teens. I was a child actor. I started acting professionally at 10 years old. So, but all I ever wanted to do was write and direct. I mean, that was it since I was like 8 years old. So I didn't come from a family with a lot of money. My parents were in academia and modern dance.
So broke.
So beyond broke. Yeah. So like people sleeping in our house kind of, that was my upbringing. So I saved all my money from being on Broadway for film school. And by the time I got out of film school, I was broke again. And me and Tom were living in a Fleabag apartment in Venice. And but I started booking roles. I booked Lost Boys. I booked Bill and Ted 1. And, Tom and I were super mercenary. We were just, our attitude was, how do we take what's going on with my acting career, which was, while I was very, very grateful for it, and I very much enjoyed it, was a B job. For sure.
Right.
Everything we were doing, our heart and soul was being poured into our directing work at that time. We were shooting short films, the Butthole Surfers stuff. I was, a lot of music-driven stuff and whatever we could get our hands on. Art stuff with Robert Williams and Joe Coleman and all kinds of things.
Coleman's a maniac.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He's really something else.
Yeah, he's a trip and a half.
All
We
the
followed
stuff-
him around when he was still blowing
He's
himself
blowing
up.
himself up.
Yeah, we were there for one of those. It was super scary, but really great. And one of the greatest painters alive.
Yes.
But so we were doing that kind of stuff, but we had no traction, to put it mildly. We had the opposite of traction.
Right.
And when Bill and Ted 1 happened, MTV called me up and they called me into their offices and they said, we'd like you to guest VJ the entire afternoon slot as Bill. And I said, I think I might have turned this into something more diplomatic, but I essentially said I would rather, stick large knitting needles into my eyes. Yeah. But Tom and I, my partner, have the script. And what happened was we'd been trying to get comedies made, and Sam Raimi had liked one of our early short films that we made called Squeal of Death. And he had been trying to help us get stuff off the ground with absolutely the opposite of success. Nobody gave a damn. So we sort of took one of our comedy anthology scripts, diced it up, and said, "Why don't we do this as a series?" And they said, "If you're okay not getting paid, sure." And we were like, "Of course, that's what we do."
Yeah.
So
used to it. Yeah.
and that kind of turned into Freaked, and then Bill and 2 got made. And after Bill and Ted 2, honestly, I just made a decision to stop acting professionally. I just was, for me, I was probably 25, 26 years old. Tom and I wanted to both kind of go our separate ways, and I had a bunch of things I wanted to do. He had things he wanted to do. And I really just thought, okay, I'm going to just jump off this cliff and stop using acting as a day job and just put myself in a position where I have to just write and direct for money to pay my rent. And I was starting a family and the whole bit. So, for sure, Bill and Ted was a huge catalyst for me being able to jump off into other areas and do other things. But, it's a hustle. It's a continual hustle, right? Yeah. So, I saw you in Vancouver. I had a production company in the UK. I shoot ads in the UK. I would write scripts. I would do episodic TV, whatever. But I kept my focus on the writing and directing. You know?
I did a bit of that. Crispin Glover, the great actor.
Who I love to death.
Yeah, he's a great, amazing guy.
Saw him not too long ago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
He would come over to this house. I was living in this really awful house in Silver Lake. And my roommate had a little publishing company. I had a little publishing company. She was working on his book, Rat Catching.
Right.
And so he's at my hovel every day. Oh, hi. He's always energized and always nervous. Great actor. And so right around the time River's Edge came out.
Oh, wow.
He's just really in the moment.
Yeah.
He's just doing great. And he said to me, he said, "You should consider acting." And I said, "I got my band. I'm trying to keep us on the road." He goes, "Nah." He said, "Henry, you have something." He said, "Just do me a favor, remain open-minded." Yeah. And right around that time, director said, "Hey, can you act?" And I'm starving in Silver Lake, and I'm like, "Yeah, can you pay?" Is
you
it
did
porn?
Heat around that time, didn't you?
I'm sorry. That came later.
Okay.
That came from toughing it out at UCLA student films,
Right.
And guesting in the $4 vampire movie. Just doing stuff to learn, get some artistic beats, learn the mechanics of acting.
Yeah.
She goes, there's a lot of tape on the ground and lights to hit, and there's all that besides the emotional part. There's, as you know.
Yeah.
And so I kind of took a crash course on all that. And then the acting stuff started coming, but I kind of took almost anything that was coming at me because I was taking all that money and pouring it into my little book company and my little band. Because, I'd finish a band tour and I'd be in debt to each band member for the tune of $1,700, which in those days it might as well be a million. Oh, a ton of money, unfathomable amount of money. And 4 days after the band tour, where I'm just dead on my feet, I go right back out into the world and take the same lap again, spoken word. Mm-hmm. And nice promoters I'd go backstage with all this cash from shows and go, "Can you write me checks to this guy, and this guy? I have to pay them back."
Right.
And I'd pay them back people at the Cabaret Metro, good venue, send one to this guy and this guy, and I'm sorry, guys, pay your rent. I'm so sorry, and I have to pay them back by my own tours, and then come back and try and pay my own bills. And in those days, that's where I started becoming pretty eclectic. Hey, can you do a voiceover? I got a voice. Where do you want it put over? Yeah. And I was open for business. Yeah. And living in LA, no car, taking a bus to auditions. Yeah. Power walking, coming in completely drenched in sweat to audition for the freaking Lion King. Yeah. But, just job, and I went after it and led for some to some very embarrassing auditions. They're like, thank you. Wow.
Yeah.
Get back on your bus, man.
Yeah.
And
I've done many of those.
yeah. But, I still approach these things artistically. But in those days, I needed the money for my two babies, my book company and my band.
Yeah.
And they're both needy as hell.
Yes.
And I will not let them go off the road. And I was just I was like having like baby anxiety attacks. I'd wake up in the morning like, okay, have I done everything? Am I up early enough?
Yeah.
Because I got to get my back line to Australia. Meanwhile, we're making a record. My band is rebelling on me. I'm like, no, not now. Yeah. I play Roxy Music Records to calm myself down. Brian Ferry was like, would gently serenade me through a day of like my guts twisting in my stomach.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
but it worked. I mean, you've done incredible work in that area, and it's I honestly have to tell you that like the stuff you did in Sons of Anarchy is the A.J. Weston. That's a really, really good work. That's really good acting work.
That was an interesting day. I was at my office working, and my then manager called me. He's breathless. He goes, "Do you know who Kurt Sutter is?" I'm like, "Yeah, he's the Shield guy. He's Sons of Anarchy." He's like, "He wants to meet you." I'm like, "Okay, about what?" Because I have no idea. Who cares about me as an actor? He's like, "He wants to meet you." I go, "Okay, so when's that happening?" "Now. Get in your car. Here's the address." And I went to his production office.
Yeah.
And I walk in, there's some cool girl behind the counter, like, "Oh, hey, Henry, cool, man. Go down the hall. Kurt's down there." It's like really mellow. And I walk in, and there's Kurt, like this Viking guy. Yeah. I'm like, hey, he's like, "Hey, man, have a seat. I'm Kurt." I'm like, "I know who you are, man." And so I said, "So, sir, why am I here?" And he said, "You know my shows?" I go, "Yeah, I've seen it. I like it." So he starts describing, he goes, "I got this idea for season 2. Like we're just back from Christmas break. We're just wiping the fuzz off and getting to work." And he describes this sociopathic neo-Nazi, just scum of the earth, a true skell. And I said, "So you've just told me about a brown skin hating, sociopathic, just idiot who drinks the Kool-Aid and just gets played by someone else, like by a higher power. I go to jail, that guy goes home. Like this awful person. And you brought me in to have this conversation, and you thought of me and went, well, yeah. He said, well, you want a job? And I said, white power.
Yeah.
Said,
Did he mention you're going to rape my wife part of all of this?
Yeah, hey, it's going to be fun. We'll talk about it later.
Right.
And I got the job.
Yeah.
And it was just one of the best 6 months I've ever had.
It's really
the cast is
character.
amazing.
Yeah.
And it was an awful person to play.
Yeah.
But in a way, he's very linear in that, you can't tell him anything. He knows the 3 things he knows. Brown people are bad.
Right.
And the less of them, the better. And the only weird wiggle in that part was he's a good dad.
Right.
And so how do you juxtapose the fact that he just wiped out a woman with a Glock and he picked his son up from T-ball?
Yeah.
Jeez. And that was, Kurt said, that's what all the execs who yell at me, they don't think you can do it, but I think you can.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, he said, you did it. You exceeded expectations.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you. And I can't thank him enough. But getting those kind of chops, I got from just kind of with my heart in my throat, with just nerves, just showing up on these sets, going for these auditions and getting the parts, but never really feeling legitimate as an actor until the mid-2000s when I really felt I had a kind of sort of grip on what the thing of it is.
Yeah.
It was right around the time I did Heat.
Right.
That I was like, okay, so this is what it is. And I could apply everything as a musician, all that intensity and focus and that in the moment intensity, and take that to a soundstage or an exterior scene and go, oh, so that's what it is. And that's when I never wanted to stop acting. It's all I wanted to do.
Well, it's real play. I mean, that's the really great thing about it is that once you connect with that idea, you bring everything to it. That's the fun of it. Just like watching kids play. I mean, you're literally 100% of wherever you are can go into that. It's a fantastic outlet for that.
Especially if the character's wild, because it's not the real world. It's better. It's hyper reality.
Yeah.
And that's what I try and bring into it. So let me ask you this. You've done straight up comedy films as a writer, director, creator, actor. You've scripted stuff for other people to act in, like a lot of the idiot box stuff. You're not necessarily in every single thing.
No.
Like Booyah Tribe versus the Bengals in football. I don't know if you're in that one.
No.
Must have hurt if you were.
Yeah.
Looked painful. But And now you do really, and I'm not trying to blow the proverbial smoke. It just happens to be true. You're a really good documentary maker.
Oh, thanks, honey.
And the one about the Napster and all of that. Well, I'm sorry, the title is
Downloaded.
Downloaded.
Yeah.
And you and I did the Grammy Museum panel on that. This is one of the finer documentaries I've seen in a while, and I was honored to be in it. But just amazing. And so my question is, of all the stuff that you do, like, getting paid, like shooting a commercial, or the comedy, or et cetera, where does documentary, what place does it hold in your love of all the stuff you do?
I genuinely like people.
Right.
I'm very curious about people.
Because that comes through in the documentary work. You're really after an answer.
Yeah, I really am. And I genuinely have, I think both compassion for the person I'm talking to, whatever side they fall on, and an interest in trying to get to the heart of where they're coming from.
Right.
And I think some of that comes from acting. I started acting very young. And as we were just talking about, acting involves immersing yourself in a person that is usually not you.
Right.
And if you enjoy doing that, it's a very similar thing in a way to making docs, where you're immersing yourself in Sean Fanning or Ross Ulbricht for the Silk Road case, or like Zappa, which is what I'm doing now. And you literally inhabit that person. And on a more microcosmic level, when you sit down for an interview with someone, you're inhabiting them in a way.
Yeah.
If that's up your street, then I think it's something that you'll like to do. If it isn't, then it's probably extremely unpleasant. But I found, I came into docs by accident because the Napster story was something that I originally sold to Paramount to write and direct as a narrative. And I wrote it. I wrote many drafts there, and it went into turnaround. It was just way too early to try to make a movie about the digital revolution, especially because in 2003, everyone in the film industry thought this guy was the Antichrist.
Right.
He
was hated.
He had ruined everything. And here I was not making a film that sort of made him a saint, but he was neither a saint nor a villain in my portrayal, which is how I view him. And so I couldn't get it made. And I just clung to it. And eventually it occurred to me that I'd done so much legwork, so much investigative reporting to write the screenplay. I knew everybody on all sides, the labels, the RIAA, the government, all the kids at Napster, the Silicon Valley VC. I was like, why don't I try to pitch it as a doc? And I sold it like in a day. I went to VH1. I was like, you want to make a Napster doc? They're like, yeah, you can start next week.
Wow.
So it's Hollywood, man. I'd spent 12 years banging my head against a wall trying to get that thing made as an independent movie, and I sold it as a doc in one day.
Wow.
And literally within 4 days, I was in San Francisco shooting Sean Parker and Sean Fanning, and then I was shooting you down here in LA, and I was all over the place. And I didn't know if I was going to like the experience. I just loved the experience. And I also love, and maybe similar to what you do with the music and some of your publishing work, I like how long it takes.
Yeah, I've come to enjoy I have this deja vu moment where I'm sitting with the notepad or the computer thinking to myself, 2 years from now, I'm still going to be working on this book.
Yeah.
And the first time that occurred to me, it horrified me. I'm like, oh no. And now I kind of go, yeah. And that's what it takes. And I kind of love it.
Yeah.
I basically build big ships that I'm not interested in sailing in. I just build them so they don't leak, so you, the reader, can sail in them.
That's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah. And I love the fact when they leave the dock, because now the dock's empty and I can build another one.
Yeah.
And I love I do 2 minutes of elation. Like, we did it, because the books are so hard to do. And when the thing finally comes out, like every bone in your body aches. And then you put it on the shelf and go, cool, so let's start drafting this other one. I'm 55, and it is my primary interest now is to make up ideas and then actualize them. I'm going to go to these 5 countries with my backpack and these 2 lenses and this one camera body, and I'm going to do it. And I book it, and like 2 months later, there I am in Mongolia with my camera doing it.
Yeah.
And I live for that. If you had your way, if
my way.
Thank you, I love it. If you had your way, can you tell me 3 or 5 people or subjects that you would want to make a documentary of? Just if they just the door opened right now? I'm just curious to see where your head's at as far as.
It's really tough because you're probably the same, but I'm so immersed in what I'm doing at the moment.
Well, can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, I can talk. Absolutely.
Like, talk about it as far as you can talk about it.
For sure. Yeah, we just, I'm doing a very expansive documentary on Frank Zappa. And I came off this, I'd done 2 docs on tech back to back, downloaded about Napster and Deep Web about the Silk Road drug market.
Right.
And that one was really tough. It was a guy going through a federal criminal trial, double life sentence. I knew the family. It was extremely depressing and stressful. And I thought, okay, I don't want to do another tech doc right away. I am working on a couple others that I want to do down the road. And my producer is a guy named Glenn Zipper, who's done a lot of music docs. And we were talking about what to do next. And generally what I like to do is I like to do a doc around one person primarily. Even if I don't get to, like with Silk Road, Ross was in jail and I knew I was never going to get to meet him physically. And that was actually a fun challenge. But in Zappa's case, he's passed away 20 some odd years ago. But I was super fascinated in doing one more doc about very polarizing American figures that had completely changed, upended the cultural and political landscape. And Glenn said to me, I don't think anyone's made a Zappa doc. And we sat there and thought, why the hell has nobody made a Frank Zappa doc? And it seemed like the perfect thing to do. So I went, through the family and I met with Gail Zappa, Frank's widow. And I talked about what I wanted to do and that I didn't want to make a music doc. I don't really make music docs, but I really wanted to make an expansive epic about her husband. And she liked my take and she said, I thought I was going to, be able to turn around in like a year and a half, 2 years. And she said, you have full access to our vault. Which she had never granted to anyone before. And I went down, I looked at it, and it's floor to ceiling content. Zappa was an incredible archivist, and it's all down there from the 50s on. Art, Super 8 film, audio, quarter-inch audio tape that he hand cut. It just goes on and on. On every record, every Beefheart record, everything is down there. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to take me at least another 3 years to do, but I'm down. This is it's a documentarian's dream to have that much archival that hasn't been released already.
That kind of access?
Yeah,
incredible.
It's crazy. So I did a Kickstarter.
Is that an undiscovered vein? I mean, it's like Tutankhamun's tomb. No one's tapped it.
Yeah. So we did a Kickstarter because the Zappa family isn't rolling in money. They have money. They've been focusing it on releasing content that's commercial and keeping their business alive as they should. So I did a Kickstarter in order to raise money to start off the doc and throw cash at preserving all this archive. So that's what I'm doing now. I've got like 8 months of pure archival work in front of me. That's pretty much all I'm doing is preservation archival, and then I'll start the movie after that.
Wow, I was at the National Archives a couple of years ago. I had a buddy there. And I was in the vault where they keep the first 26 years of Congress. Me and Ian MacKay looking over Lincoln documents.
I think did you do an article or something?
Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
I'm still numb from that experience.
Yeah.
And we looked at the rough draft of the Bill of Rights, like the one going between the two houses getting marked up.
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
Ridiculous. At one point, our guide, Matt, brought out all the Zappa transcripts.
From the PMRC?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And, I'm sure you can find it all on the internet, but this is all like the original markups and everything, because he blew people's minds.
He did.
They're not
that
ready.
testimonial is absolutely it's genius.
They're not ready for a bearded guy who they think is some high, guy
stony noodler.
Yeah, who is so not that. He'll rip your head off with his mind.
Completely.
On any level, musically, as an intellectual. Yeah, he knows everything.
Yeah.
And that PMRC, so I'm just surprised Tipper Gore had a limb left after that.
No, she didn't really.
But he just demolished her premise.
Yeah.
So beautifully and so constitutionally, and just to get to go through their take. I mean, it was the government's. They snatched it away from the court stenographer, and I'm like, Ian and I were like, this is so. Zappa, what a true badass. So you're going to be dealing with Frank Zappa 2 years from now. You're still going to be knee deep or eyeball deep. What if all that smoke cleared right now? Is there a person or a topic or a thing that you would like to get access to and be able to have and to make a documentary statement?
It's so funny. As a filmmaker, you get very mercenary. Like, do I want to say this and blow my wad?
Oh, no. No.
You know what I mean?
No, you very well could get end around it. How about this as an amateur who's not going to make a documentary?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you about the one that I pitched and just got not even laughed out the door. I got hurled out the door. I came up with a 3-part documentary. This was my wet dream. Part 1 Vietnam, part 2 Cambodia, part 3 Laos. What is it? Unexploded Ordnance and Agent Orange, Operation Ranch Hand, Let's Go Get Monsanto and Dow. And I came up with PDFs, maps. I taught myself.
It's funny because one of my doc ideas is in that world that I want to do.
I put this scorched earth thing, like let's tell the truth. And I went to Hanoi, did research, went to a place where 4th generation kids are getting treated for, what they were never even born around to, now they're toxified with.
Yeah.
I met Vietnam veterans. I interviewed them. I had a translator. One guy has like 9 kids. 5 of them died. 2 of them have like 1 eye because the toxicity.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Operation Ranch Hand, like Agent Orange is not toxic. It's not toxic to people. Like it's killing American veterans.
Yeah.
And so I came up with this beautiful PDF. I was doing documentaries for National Geographic at the time. I walk it into Nat Geo and they have a little meeting and I got things for everybody. I'm so ready. And they looked at it and they said, Henry, this is very interesting. And you could just see the fear of like GE pulling out.
I've been in that. The office is in D.C. too, which is like being at the Pentagon.
Yes.
Kind of. Yeah.
And you could barely get, I worked there. I could barely get past the counter. Anyway.
Right. That's fantastic. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So it is. It should be done.
Yeah.
And so I pitched it to them. They're like, no, I never worked for them again after that.
Yeah.
But I got, I think Partisan Media got behind me. They're great, and they loved my idea. They said, "Let's go out and pitch it."
Yeah,
and we went out, and everyone went, "Get out of our building, you psycho, you!"
Yeah,
and
that's the definition of a hot button.
Yeah, no one wants it.
Yeah, I had one like that.
Every idea I've ever had, they're all they go there, and no one wants it. They just do not want it.
Yeah.
And at one point, I was in Thailand making a documentary and about world hunger. And I read in the Herald Tribune that that coming year was going to be the 25th anniversary of the Bhopal disaster in Bhopal, India, the Union Carbide India Limited methyl isocyanate gas leak that killed thousands of people, the death cloud.
Yeah.
And I said, damn it, I'm going to do my research for an entire year. I'm going to go. And I was there. I snuck onto the plant, the Union Carbide plant, past armed guards who just wouldn't have shot me. Get out.
Yeah.
But I snuck by. I found the control panel for tank like 131 or whatever it was. I found the tag that said MCI, methyl isocyanate. I was at ground zero. I found it. I took photos, got my photos, snuck back out, and showed my photos to slideshows, and I did all this stuff. And very gratifying to have never made a documentary. I did it all still and I wrote about it. But I got like Amnesty International helped me with my fact finding. I was like tapping people. It was the first time I ever went and said, hey, can you help me? I'm trying to do this. And they're like, yes. And they gave me tons of documentation. And it made me see the enormity of one of those projects. Man, it's intimidating.
Yeah.
And so when you take on something like this Zappa thing, which just sounds like you're in a Library of Congress unto itself of Zappa.
Yeah, completely.
How do you prioritize? Like, how are you going to get your head around how many hours can you devote to this in a day?
It's similar to what you said about the book. I was thinking that when you said it. You have a beginning and an end, and then you got to find the alphabet in between.
Yeah.
And it's a combination of coming at it like a sort of a classical writing structure, like I'm going to build a narrative, but also from an acting standpoint of like inhabiting a character. I want to see where this character takes me, and why I like docs. Are such an unprecedented form for doing this kind of work because they take long enough that I can spend the first year in fluidity.
Right.
I can just play around in his brain.
And find the directions that you thought were great that aren't.
Oh, without a doubt. That's all the way up till the week before the festival. You're like, oh, Act 3's got to go, dude.
Yeah.
With Deep Web, I had a whole Bitcoin movie that just no one's ever going to see. It just went. I was like, this has got to go. So for sure, you have to be open to that at any point along the journey, but you just get to play in that person's space. But in the back of my mind, I have kind of a classical narrative in my head. It will change. Parts of it will be thrown out, but it's there. And I have the essence of who I feel he is,
right.
and that's there. And that's kind of an anchor for you. So I never really feel completely lost. I go through all the permutations you discussed, hating it, hating myself, loving it, then hating what I thought I loved, all
right.
that stuff. But in general, I have kind of an anchor that I'm holding on to.
So there's a through line that keeps you. You always know you're going north. Or
exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that tends to stay alive. And I've written enough. Both stuff that's been made and stuff that hasn't, to have a pretty good idea of what that anchor feels like. So I know if I'm really off base. But I'm making a movie. I'm not making a 20-hour series. I want to make maybe a 3-hour movie about Frank Zappa. That's going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's going to have 3 acts and a midpoint, and work kind of classically on a certain level. That becomes also a framing device.
Someone out there is going to have to do the Bowie doc.
I know. I was thinking that actually
because
recently.
that's another world.
Yeah,
that's a guy
it's
who
vast.
It's a
and
big
Prince. Someone's going to have to do that.
Yeah, and that's
that's huge.
Who knows how many 100 songs are sitting or 1,000 songs
and
are sitting
video
there.
like just that archive has got to be off the rails. So.
Neil Young, another guy who has his lyrics from like 8th grade.
Yeah,
he has his like cassettes of when he's doing like surf instrumentals. He kept everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what you have to do now.
Okay,
you for one of the
job should I choose to
you have to ask me like 1 or 2 questions about my new movie, The Last Heist.
Great, which I just watched.
We do have to put that in there.
Great.
At some point, so I'm asking you to do that.
Great. Okay, great. I was heading in that direction.
Okay, good.
Okay, so talking about wholly unlikable characters that turn out not to be wholly unlikable.
Yeah.
You want to talk about Bernard in this new movie?
Yeah, sure. Last year at some point I was offered that, the script, and I read it, and I'm not trying to put the film down, but it is somewhat genre specific. There's going to be tough guys, guns, blood. Some people are going to die. We've seen this before. And so I read the thing and I saw, they want me for the bad guy. And they basically, it's kind of yours for the taking. They like you and they think you can do it. So I read the script and I said, this is interesting. It's a bank heist with a serial killer not even knowing there's a heist. He's going through it, extracting people's eyeballs with a religious fervor to send them to heaven. And so he doesn't care about guns. He's not afraid of anything because, he's working for the man. And so I said, it's a movie inside a movie. It's a story inside a story. So I saw what my guy could be, like, whoa, and I avoid that at all costs.
Yeah.
So if I have 3 days to play around, if they want to give it to me, I can just sit here and really get into this. And so I invented this very clammy, smiley, but just gross smile, like a lizard smiling, like, wow, he's nice. Get your kids away from him. He's all kinds of bad. You just know it.
Yeah.
And so I went to Mike Mendez, our wonderful director, and I said, here's my idea. Ultra gross, clammy, lethal, but the smile is smarmy and just awful, and he's just absolutely berserk, but quiet. And he said, I like that. He said, my idea is kind of the same. He's not yelling. I go, no. He loves God. He loves he's sending people to heaven, and he wants to take you out. And he said, let's go with that. And that's when I signed on. It just worked out. And it was an interesting film because all around me, there's cops and SWAT teams and tough guys and 2 brothers deceiving each other and a whole bunch of people who are it's all Shakespearean. Everyone deceives each other.
Right.
And the only person who's really going for a truthful mission with conviction is me. And I'm awful. I'm killing people.
Yeah.
And so my experience in the film was interesting because you've seen it and there's like cop cars and all this stuff rolling up. I never saw any of those people.
Right.
All my days on set was in, these scary places downtown.
Corridors and dark hallways.
Yeah, like having quiet scenes like, I'm killing you. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
And I met everyone at the rap party. But by and large, it was just every time I meet someone, they die.
Right.
And in the end, I win.
Yeah.
And it was one of the oddest film experiences I've ever had because it's a hectic movie.
Right.
But my scenes were it's like me and 2 other actors on set all day. And it was like quiet set.
Yeah.
And the next day I'm not there fighting and kaboom and all this stuff. It was just, I've never been in a film where I'm really a big part of it, but I didn't see anyone. And I watched it the other day. I was really happy how it came out.
Yeah, I am too. I think that specifically the physicality of your role is what I really loved. Was the way you carry yourself, and it's funny because I remember, you were talking about the journey that sort of took you into acting and where acting has taken you, and I love how the versatility of your physicality and the roles that you play, because it's very different than Weston. The physicality of this guy, he's very graceful. This guy, and childlike and yet not, and smarmy, yes, but not.
I was trying to make him very bird-like, like very inquisitive. Like birds are always like looking around, like, "Hello, that's new." And it was really fun, just being, remember him on the way into work every day. I'd go through miserable downtown traffic.
Yeah.
And by the time I get to the set, I'm like, "Hello. Good to see you guys again." I go into makeup like, "Good morning." And then I kind of just live it. It was an interesting time.
Yeah, it's a fun thing to inhabit. It's a fun role to inhabit.
Yeah, I really enjoy, the older I get and the more film I do, I really enjoy that big journey where I'm going to be this guy for 2 months.
Yeah.
And now, at this point, I look for any opportunity to be that extreme because I don't do music anymore. And so the only times I get to that extremity is in acting. And I really enjoy the hyper-reality of fiction, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just playing that and knowing you can throw yourself into it 100%.
Yeah, that's what I loved about Sons of Anarchy. You're surrounded by hardcore actors in a hardcore plot. And it was just great to go without restraint. And you just have to really throw yourself into it. And again, when I wrapped out of that, I'm like, damn, man, I'm going to miss this.
Yeah.
Because real life is such a drag.
Yeah, exactly. Play is better.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe a good place to wind down?
Sure.
It's really fantastic. I mean, I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah, the same here, man. And I must say, it's so good to see you again. And we've been friends for so many years. And I really, again, I'm not trying to be too much of a fanboy, but I really admire what you do, the intensity that you work at, and the fact that you're always doing something. Like you're never just like kicking back. And thank you, because it inspires me. And every time we bump into each other, we're both kind of passing by.
Yeah,
on
we're both
the way to,
we're both on fire.
Yeah,
we're like running with our pants on fire.
Yeah, running to the next thing.
Yeah.
And it's just good to know that you're out there and that you're not even just sounds like you're just gearing up. Like this Zappa thing sounds like maybe your biggest undertaking as a documentary.
So far, without a doubt, by a mile.
Yeah, just for the sheer volume.
Yeah, this may be my Waterloo. I may go down on this, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what you come up with, man.
Yeah.
And it's good to see you again.
You too, man. Thanks, Henry.
Yeah, thank you.
This is Nick Dawson from Talk Has Film, and you've been listening to Alex Winter and Henry Rollins on the Talk Has Film podcast. This episode was engineered by Derek Olds and edited by Talk Has podcast producer Elia Einhorn. For more filmmakers talking film and TV, visit thetalkhouse.com/film. Subscribe to Talk Has Film and Talk Has Music podcasts on iTunes, where you can find all our previous episodes. And while you're there, please rate and review if you can.